Good morning, everybody. Before we begin, I'd just like to say welcome to Her Excellency, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Toppo from USA Today. Joining me here today is really just a wonderful, distinguished panel. We're going to talk about teacher effectiveness and teacher quality. We've known for years that if you take all of the elements that make up the classroom experience, that the effectiveness of the teacher is the most important element. We know that through evidence, we know that through research, and we know that in a real way through common sense. Yet the question remains, what are we actually doing on a day-to-day basis to make that work? Our panel, you are very lucky today, our panel is probably three of the most thoughtful people on that exact question. What are we doing to get the best people in our classrooms? And I'm sorry, two of you have come from afar. One of you, I think, just pulled out of his driveway this morning and fought the traffic, right?
Yes.
Okay. So some of us have come from afar. The name of the session is Qualified Teachers for Quality Learning, obviously. And one of the things that, as I was preparing for the session, I was thinking about a really interesting book I had read recently by one of my colleagues in the US, Dana Goldstein, who writes really, I think, intelligently and very passionately about the history of teaching, at least in America. And one of the things she notices about our history is that we have this sort of odd, bifurcated opinion about teachers. On the one hand, we worship them, and on the other hand, we don't treat them very well. And she's trying to sort of get to the root of that. There's an interesting quote recently, the US Education Secretary, "Great teachers are performing miracles every single day. An effective teacher, they walk on water." I don't really need to add to that metaphor. Yet our president, Barack Obama, in his State of the Union recently, a couple of years ago, said essentially he's going to do what he can to fight bad teachers. So we've got this sort of interesting dual perspective on teachers, which I think we really don't have about too many other professions. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping we can, throughout the morning, kind of tackle why that is. I'm going to get to our panel now. The way we're going to do it is I'm going to give them each a couple of minutes just to kind of tell us, for lack of a better term, who they are and why they're here. And then we'll move on to as informal a discussion as we can. To my way immediate right is Mohammed Fakhroo. He joined Teach for Qatar as CEO in 2013. He graduated from the University of Brighton and joined the founding teams at Isdan Real Estate and Makeen Investment and Real Estate Development. Since then, though, he's undergone a conscious career shift, which is why he's here, from the private sector to the NGO sector. And it's a choice he credits to the desire to effect positive change within society. Sitting next to him is Mervi Jansson from Finland. She joined Omnia, the Joint Authority of Education in the Espoo region, in 2007. She's a founding member of the Omnia Lifelong Learning Hub, a unique center of excellence blending the world of work and learning. We're going to hear a little bit about that today, too. And then to my immediate right is Professor Tan Oon Seng, the director of the National Institute of Education in Singapore. He was previously Dean of Teacher Education at the Institute, where he spearheaded the Teacher Education for the 21st Century Initiative as a major milestone innovation for teacher education, both nationally and internationally. And what you need to know is that we, the four of us got together yesterday just to sort of think about what we were going to do on the panel today. And I had to, as the moderator, I had to stop them from talking to one another because all they wanted to do was ask each other questions about what they were doing. And I thought, there needs to be something you don't know about each other tomorrow. Okay, so And I even had Mohammed's staff say, you know, this is your job. He may not talk to anyone else on the panel till tomorrow. So I'm really excited to hear from all of you, and we'll start with Mohammed.
My name is Mohammed Fakhroo. I'm the CEO of Teach for Qatar, but I would like to tell you a little bit about myself first. So as Greg said, I was born here and I was in a private school throughout my life, and then I went into, I got my bachelor's degrees from Brighton, and I spent my first 7 years working in a commercial setting, whether it was real estate investment or restructuring or establishing departments. That being said, my turning point in life was after a school visit. And it was actually after a school visit from a guest we have over here. She was trying to recruit me and convince me to join education, Janvi. And she told me, could you come with me to one of the public schools? And I said, yes. When I walked in there, I saw a teacher that gave up on their kids, and I saw students that were not motivated to learn. Then and there, I took a pledge, and I decided to join education, and myself and the team and Her Excellency decided to set up Teach for Qatar.
So you really had no experience in education other than your own education at that point?
Absolutely, that's right. And this is why the Teach for All model is quite welcome. It gives opportunities for people that have never done education to actually be in education. So let me tell you a little bit about what is Teach for Qatar. We're a local NGO, and we are working as part of the solution to help the challenges that our kids in the classroom face today in Qatar. Again, part of the solution. And we do this by having fantastic individuals, high achievers, to join the program, to teach for 2 years through a leadership and teacher training program. You might ask, what is our vision? We want a nation of excellence in which every single student are driven to achieve. Now, you may ask, how does this model work? For many of the non-Teach for All participants, Greg, I'm going to use you as an example if you don't mind. So let's say Greg over here wants to give back to his country, Greg wants to inspire the next generation, or Greg wants to develop his leadership skills and believes that education is important. Greg applies to Teach for Qatar. And after Greg applies, we obviously have a rigorous selection criteria to make sure that you have the right leadership skills and you are actually passionate to stay in those classrooms for 2 years. After Greg passes the assessment day, we train him for 7 to 8 weeks intensively, where we give you most of the foundations of teacher training and we get you to teach in our summer school. Once you're done with that, we place you in one of the public schools, teaching math, science, and English in year 7 or year 8. And we support you on a weekly basis to ensure that your performance improves. And we give you a lot of leadership development as well, because we want you to be an outstanding individual once you're done with a 2-year program. And then once you're done, Greg can then decide, I can stay in education, I can study Masters in Policy, Public Policy, and join the government entity and inspire change. Or he can decide to stay in his sector or go back to his sector, which in your case is journalism, right? And still be an advocate, as we see him today, for quality education. So this is how the model works. Now, why Teach for Qatar? Lack of student motivation and engagement. Statistics show us that 50% of children are not engaged in the classroom. We have chronic absenteeism. We have a shortage of local teachers. And the reason we have a shortage of local teachers is because teaching is not considered to be as a career of choice. So what do we do about it in Teach for Qatar? What we do is we cultivate an interest in teaching, making it as a viable career. So I make it an option for the graduates who are our fellows, who have not studied education, to come and have an opportunity to teach. I train passionate leaders to be so inspirational in the classroom in the short run. And last but not least, I'm trying to change society's perception towards teaching. So when we talk about engineers, when we talk about doctors, teachers needs to be there at the same place. So this is what we do. And you may be curious to know, how do we change perceptions? Because we've been talking a lot as a panel on teacher symbolism and the importance of teacher symbolism. We do it through we've got three ways of doing that. We either visit all the universities in Qatar. We provide info sessions. And another way is we have social media campaigns. So we have industry leaders, we've got phenomenal influential people that just came in 4 weeks ago to thank their teacher and tell them that we are successful because you taught us. And last but not least, we participate in community engagements such as Qatar National Day. So we're there with all of the locals saying, give back to your country, education is important, teaching is such a hard job.
الإخوان أول ما جوني كلموني أنا طبعا تخوفت.
من هم؟ ما هي تخصصاتهم؟
حبيت أقابلهم، أشوف المجموعة هذه إني أقابلها، بس ما كنت متحمسة.
أنا بالحقيقة أول شيء ما كنت يعني أقول إن مادة العلوم صعبة، لكن الأستاذ سهل لي إياها.
ولا مرة عصبت علينا، تحترم آرائنا، يعني لما مثلا حتى إذا كانت الإجابة غلط يعني مستحيل إن هي تسخر منا.
هو طيب جدا يعني، وبيشرح المسائل بطريقة غير مختلفة جدا عن المدرسين.
أنا عندي المس يعني بترفع معنوياتي، بحس إني أشطر واحدة في الصف.
طبعا هم جانا بعد فترة تدريب حوالي 8 أسابيع، فكانت وقفتهم أفضل من وقفة معلمة جديدة كانت توها خريجة ما أتيحت لها فرصة التدريب.
أبهروني صراحة، مادة علمية قوية، خلفية علمية صحيحة، التزام، انضباط، فهذا الشيء عطاني أريحية إنه بالفعل تم اختيار نخبة تم تدريبها على التدريس.
سووا علاقات قوية جدا بينهم وبين الطلاب، علاقة تفاعل، علاقة احترام، علاقة محبة، علاقة احترام. وهذا الشيء جدا مهم جدا بالنسبة حق المدرس، انه يرتبط بالطالب علاقة قوية جدا.
كل يوم من الطلاب يكونون افضل واكثر حب للمادة واكثر انتباها، تحسن في السلوك. كل ما طالب يتحسن أنا هني آخذ دفعة أقوى من السابقة وتخليني أستمر في عطائي. كل ما المدرس اكتسب هيبته، كل ما النظام التعليمي يعطي المدرس هيبة أكبر، كل ما قدر المدرس إنه يطبق كل أدوات التعليم الحديثة.
وقفني طالب من صف 9 قال لي أستاذ يا أخي أنت إيش سالفتك، جايب أغراض، شايل أغراض، طالع بأغراض ومتعب نفسك، إيش ناط ولابتوب يقول ولا واحد من المدرسين يسوي شيء، دخل من هالصوب وطلع من الصوب الثاني إحنا الطلاب، ليش تعور راسك؟ قلت له اصبر تعال، أنت مو بنت كثري، مو بنت عايش في هالبلد، مو بنت منتمي لهالبلد. قال لي إيه؟ قلت ما تحس إنك تستاهل حد يتعب لك، حد يوفر لك هالأشياء كلها، حد يعلمك بطريقة مختلفة؟ قال لي إيه؟ قلت له بس خلاص هاي السبب ليش ان انا قاعد اتعب معاك، وان انا احاول ان انا اوصل لك المعلومه بطريقه مختلفه.
2 فقط منتسبات انا اخذتهم من المؤسسه، لكن لهم بصمه ولهم اثر في المدرسه. الجميل فيهم الشغف للعمل، الشغف للتعلم، ما عندهم كلمه مستحيل. هذه العناصر احنا نحتاجها في مجال التعليم.
لما الطالب يروح البيت ويتكلم عن المدرسة وعن الطالب بشيء إيجابي نستفاد ومعجب جدا منه، أنا رأيي الشخصي هذا قمة نجاح المدرس.
قاعد أقول هل بينجحون ولا لا، ولكن في الفترة القليلة بحكم قربي منهم والمجهود الرائع الضخم اللي قاعد يعملونه، الله ما ضيع تعبهم، أقولهم بالفعل نجحوا 100% في إنهم يوفرون. والدليل على ذلك أنا كلمتهم قلت لهم أبي السنة الجاية أيضا منتسبات علمنا جل قطر في المدرسة.
Thank you. So what I was about to say before the video started, that we have been operating for almost 2 years. Our first cohort have been in the classroom for a year and a few months. Our amazing second cohort as well have been in the schools for 3 months. Our impact so far is we affect on average 1,600 students per day.
How many?
1,600 students per day. We had over 700 applicants to join the program, and we have over 30 fellows in the classroom, and last but not least, we have 17 partner schools.
So again, the numbers of applicants versus actual fellows.
Yeah, so
Tell us again.
we're quite select. So we had 700 applicants, and we usually accept 10%. The conversion rate is approximately 10%. And then from the people that have accepted the fellowship are over 30.
By the way, and I know you're a good teacher because you totally went with the flow there when the video started. That was well done.
You should meet my fellows.
Yeah, really. They're even more chill, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Mervi, tell us who you are and why you're here.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. A couple of words about where I'm coming from, because I'm not 100% the product of Finnish education. So I've gone to school in Canada, the US, and UK, as well as Finland. I've also taught on all levels of Finnish education, so that gives me some perspective, hopefully, into our system and how and why it works as it does. Now, currently, I'm working at Omnia, which is short for the Joint Authority of Education in the Espoo region, which is quite a mouthful. And it is a true representative of the Finnish education, so it is a center that really serves our region, which is the city of Espoo. We're owned by 3 municipalities. Espoo is the largest, and basically what we're doing is we're serving 40,000 students annually. So we have upper secondary, we have vocational upper secondary, we have adult programs, we do professional development for teachers, we have an amazing entrepreneurship hub, and of course we do a lot of international work, which is my forte. And basically, I've had also the pleasure of being, let's say, in the center of developing Finnish education. Because Finland, although our education system is very good, we drive for change because we know we can't just sit back and say, hey, look, everything's great, we don't need to do anything. That would be false, for sure. So basically, Finland set up a think tank about a year ago. It was a 6-month process. And I have a couple of the publications that we actually more or less delivered as the end product to our government. And our statement is that Finland is a land of people who love to learn. That's how we see ourselves. And we have 10 key statements that I'd like to share with you today. So first of all, our number one statement is that stupid is not really stupid. And we're referring to both the teachers and the students here. So let's not undermine either or. Grades do not represent the full scope of learning. So really, if that's only what we're measuring, then we're going it definitely the wrong way. Teachers must not work alone. So it is not the sole responsibility of the teacher to create a good learning environment and a holistic process for learning. It is definitely a community commitment from the school, from the parents, from the region. Tear the school down, build a village. That relates to learning is everywhere. So let's not just look at the school as a place for learning. Number 5 is focus on competences, not on degrees. Surprise, surprise. I think that's something that resonates with a lot of companies and nowadays where education is going. More development, less red tape. That again refers to the Finnish system of applying for extra funds for development, which is somewhat complicated. Fairness replaces equality. Technology is about humans, not devices. So if we're looking at iPads as, let's say, a bookshelf that can fit thousands of whatever publications and books, we're definitely going at the wrong way. Education is worth taking to places where it does not exist, and love of learning cannot be measured, but it can be seen. So that more or less summarizes the work we did, and my work evolves around the second last. So education is worth taking to places where it does not exist or where it needs to be improved. So basically, I have the honor of partnering with a lot of countries to work on education, and that is really an exciting process, in my opinion.
I think in the U.S., if we started out a policy statement with "stupid is not really stupid," I don't know what would happen. Thanks, Mervi. Let's go to Oon.
Well, what a joy to be here. When I saw the video, the Teach for Qatar, it reminds me of myself in the classroom not too long ago. I taught as a mathematics teacher, and I took on the position of a deputy headmaster, and then I went on to the Polytechnic, and then I went on to the National Institute of Education, where I now become the director. You know, every time I step into a classroom, every time I get close to a classroom, it's just an excitement for me. When I was the deputy headmaster, what I did was to teach the hardest class. And I was in a school where they told me that in that area, some of these kids belong to secret societies. That means they belong to gangs. And I had a couple of these people in my class. You know, when you go into a class with these rowdy kids, and in Singapore, classes are large, 40 students for your information. Now, you never win in the class, right? 40 students, big, huge adolescents. This was secondary school class. They're not going to give you the respect. The leaders among them is going to be the ones who's going to just show their disrespect, and they're going to test you. And people wonder how, you know, I won over these kids. And it's very, very simple, you know. I always see myself as a detective when I was a teacher. So before I took over the class, I would study every one of these 40 kids. Then I get the one who is the ringleader, who was the most difficult. And even before the class started, I would ask him and say, meet me in the canteen, which is the food court. Now he got surprised because normally they are called to the principal's office. But I said, meet me in the canteen. And he thought this guy wants to fight me, or what does he want to do? I see him there, and I says, hey, John, take a seat. I'm sure you haven't quite had your lunch or breakfast, right? They probably haven't eaten much. I said, sit down. I get him a plate of food, give him a coffee. I sat with him, and I drank, and I said, eat. There's food in front of him, so he eats, you know. After that, I says, very good, you know. We're going to be together for a long time. The next day when I go to class, this ringleader, as usual, you know, in Singapore, you have the Asian system where the kids rise and they have to, you know, say their greeting. You know, he starts to try to, but the moment I look at him in the eyes, he remembered the coffee that he drank from me. It's absolutely different. My passion is that policymakers today, we need to understand, you know, that teaching, and in order to motivate people to come into the teaching, we got to realize that people who come into teaching come with a sense of the mission and the calling. And in all our selection panel, this is the first thing we do. First, we look for, as in Teach for Qatar, very brilliant people, but then we ask and select very carefully those who truly have that passion and call for teaching. So about 5 to 6 years ago, I revamped the teacher education curriculum at the National Institute of Education. Now, what do you change? I mean, teacher education curriculum is quite stereotypical. You can, everybody talk about you need good educational studies, they need to know pedagogy, they need to have content, curriculum studies, how to teach well in the subject. So what is there to improve? Because Singapore, we do have quite good evolution of the curriculum. But when I look at this whole system, and I said, there is something more than just the competence in teaching the content. And so instead of the traditional approach to the curriculum, where we look at just skills, knowledge, right, attitudes, I changed it all around. And I said, it will be values, number 1, values, number 2, values, number 3, and then skills and knowledge. Now people wonder, what is all these skills? I mean, what is this, all these values? Well, the first value that I talk about was basically, why is a teacher a teacher? I mean, why are you a teacher? Well, the number one value of a teacher is that a teacher, more than anybody else in the world, cares and believes in the learner. Now I'm going to ask you, how many of you believe in the learner? If you believe in the learner, put up this green card. See?
Okay.
So many people who can join Teach for Qatar. Passion for the learners. You know, the teacher is a strong believer that every child can learn, and the teacher cares for the learner maybe even more than the parent. Why? Because the teacher is being equipped with this knowledge. And that is why when they come into our program, and in the teacher education program, we tell you that it is going to be very rigorous, very demanding, the clinical aspect of the experience, as well as lots of research knowledge pertaining to the child. Because if you are confident and you know about the developmental psychology of a child or an adolescent, you are confident to help the child. And my friends, when they have adolescent kids and they have a problem, they tell me. And I say, no problem, because I am a teacher. I know how to work around the heart of the adolescent because I understand the whole psychology of the kids today and the profile of how they are behaving. So the number one value in this whole curriculum revamp I did was that the first value of a teacher is the care and the belief in the learner, the centrality of learner, value number one. Value number two is about the teacher himself, what I call the teacher identity or the teacher personhood, right? It's very important how teachers see themselves. First of all, I think the concept of a teacher in itself is a very, very important symbol. When you talk about a teacher, first of all, there is the cultural aspect, especially in Asia and in the Middle East, right? Where traditionally, when you talk about the sense of a teacher, the cultural aspect of a sense of a teacher is one of a transmission of values, of roots, of the whole society. So the teacher has a very important role. So I tell the teachers, you know, how you impact the student in the classroom is not just about the teaching and learning, but a whole symbol about what teacher is in the society. So the teacher identity is very important. It has to be characterized by one who is prepared to role model the quest for learning, high standards, high expectations, but a deep care for the learner. So that is number two value, the teacher identity. Number three value is about the teacher and the community. Now, teacher is hard work, right? And everybody knows that. But we need to help and empower the teachers to see that you never walk alone in a classroom. The teacher is always plugged into the community. You don't take all the burden upon yourself because you need to know that it takes a village indeed to raise a child. Now, when you find a child with great difficulty, perhaps they need more than just intervention beyond education. What do? You need to connect to the educational psychologist. You need to connect to the community help group, right? And so the teacher is not just being about in the classroom. He is a networker with the whole community. So that is, herein lies the value. The learner, the teacher, and the community. So this was the crux of the major revamp that I did that permeate the teacher education curriculum.
I mean, it seems like, just getting back to the first one, the care and belief in the learner, it seems like systems so often are sort of built to defeat that, built to beat that out of at least a beginning teacher. Can you talk about how you help preserve that, especially in young teachers?
Right. So I think in order to help our teachers, because many of you here how many of you here are policy makers? Just
hold up a green card if you are a policy maker. How many of you are actual teachers?
Teachers.
Wow. Oh, okay. Wow. Very interesting.
You are amazing.
Deserve a round of
I guess we
applause.
shouldn't be surprised it is a session on teachers.
Right.
I interrupted you.
Yeah, but I'm going to answer your question in a slightly different way by rising now from the classroom level teacher to a larger system level, because I think we need to understand this both as teachers and as policy makers. So perhaps I would like to flash the slide up. Those of you some of you may have gone to the booth on the WISE research, and later on you can get this research report. But this picture, this figure, essentially summarizes, based on our research of looking at some of the best performing system, and gathering the key factors of what I call teacher policy strategies that are important to help the teacher become the best. So I mentioned just now about the recruitment of teacher. I mentioned just now about the initial teacher preparation. The other factor, of course, is the whole teacher environment, right? I think we got to get a projection to the society and to teachers themselves about the kind of working environment, teacher compensation, and the whole environment of the teacher. It's not just about salary. In fact, in my report, I say that you could have survey and you find that just improving salaries have marginal effect up to a certain point. It is about this total environment, how these teachers are treated in terms of their work environment, in terms of the workload, right, in terms of the opportunity to have their voice and so on, right? And the two other factors is what I call the teacher career structure and the continuous development. Now, why career structure? I think my colleague can add on about the professional development, but just a quick one, is that many times you hear a teacher say that, I'm a teacher for 5 years. I'm a teacher with 10 years experience. How many of you are teachers with more than 10 years experience? I see. Right.
That's not so bad, actually.
Yeah. But from now on, you got to describe yourself more than just teachers with how many years experience, right? Because if you have 10 years of the same experience over and over again, we remain as a novice teacher, right? You got to be an expert teacher, right? You got to be an expert teacher, a master teacher. And we ought to be able to live, exemplify, and articulate what is that master teacher? How do I grow from a novice teacher to one who is really an expert teacher, where I'm prepared to use a diversity of pedagogies to be able to bring about active learning and so on, right? So that is key, you know, and of course, you know, the kind of continuous development that the teacher must have. So I want to say that it is a total systemic thing and not an isolated, you know, policy in which we can help teachers.
So not just one thing or another.
That's
sort
right.
of a whole, whole system.
Right.
So I have lots of questions, but my basic curiosity at this point, having heard you lay the system out, is to my other two panelists, what is going through your minds when you hear this? How would something like this play where you are? And how much sense does it make to you?
My fellows and I have a lot to learn. And it's really interesting to see the approach that Singapore and obviously Finland that you have taken. But I'm more interested in something else that I really wanted to ask you about. I wanted to ask you about the mindset that was needed to develop all of this. Because you both spoke about community being an integral part of the change. And I wanted to know, what can we learn on how did those mindsets develop over time?
If I look at the school as a community, basically in Finland, what we do is we have development goals for the school. And obviously, each teacher plays into that. So when we have performance appraisals, it's not about how well did you teach math this year or didn't teach it, or what the students' scores were. It's very much about how you contributed to the whole community. Did you bring all the knowledge, skills, and competencies you had to the community? How can we help you do that? And how should we as a community develop further so that if we look at the national vision of where teaching should be going in Finland and basically the whole scope of learning, that we as a school are fulfilling that? And I think that has to do with our structure of professional development as well. Because let's say about 85% of Finnish teachers do actually actively engage in professional development on an annual basis. So obviously there has to be a national vision of what that professional development is, because as education is free in Finland, so is the professional development. So it comes from actually the Ministry of Education and Culture as a fund, and then schools apply for this money, but it has to go towards the national vision. Now let me give you an example. Actually, as of next fall, coding will be a compulsory subject or a part of subjects in Finnish schools. Now, our teachers, by and large, are over 50. Guess how many of them do coding in their free time? So obviously...
I think I know the one who does it.
So obviously, a lot of teachers were petrified. Coding, how am I to teach coding? So we attacked this, if you may, on a national level. And now we've had a MOOC on coding at different levels, and we've had support and peer groups. We've worked with coding companies to look at best ways to teach on all different levels. So we've really taken this as a national effort because this was something that was decided upon. So I think that pretty much sort of shows the way we look at goals and how to reach goals as a learning community.
But I guess maybe to get back to Mohammed's question, which was, if I can interpret it, sort of, I want to kind of dial back a little bit and ask, sort of, how did you get to the point where that's the kind of reaction you have to somebody saying, all of you are teaching coding? What is the, what is the process that it took to get you there?
If you don't mind me elaborating, what got you so proactive on working together with the community naturally? Like you say it like it was an effortless thing. What mindsets did you have to have, or what mindset and values that encouraged you to do that?
Well, if you look at Finland, we're 5.5 million people, so we're a small nation. So sort of having a national dialogue about education is very much in our roots. So I think that's a big part of it, that we don't see a school or a single region as a sort of a separate lone island, but it's really about a national identity of learning, and that's within the roots of our culture.
You've got all those cell phones too, right? You can communicate very well with each other. Nokia is... sorry. I guess the thing I want to push back a little bit on is something when you were talking about this sort of passion for the learner. I think in a lot of places you'd find, if you polled teachers, you'd find that they have a passion for their subject, for the topic. Talk about how that fits in with this idea of being qualified and these values that you rightfully, I think, believe are so important. Are they the same thing in a way, or is it very different?
So, I think the aspect of the content expertise cannot be underestimated, because I think if you want teachers to be able to teach deeply, inquiring deeply into the subject, you want people who are confident and have done well in the subject. So that is taken care of mostly through your selection, and depending on the kind of program, through the preparation as well. But more importantly, I think the values aspect that we are talking about is, I would say, a concerted effort and a belief that we truly want to make teaching a respected profession. Mm-hmm. In other words, we truly see teachers as professionals. So let me elaborate on that. Now, when you want to see teachers as professionals, the thing is that the professionals have to have a professional voice. Now, that's where we need to help teachers change their voice. It's not a union's voice. It's a professional voice. And we tell teachers too, if you want to be loudly heard, it's not your union voice. It's your professional voice. If the teachers say, look here, we really want to come together to innovate and discover how best to get this pedagogy going. That's professional voice. So what we need to do in a culture, I mean, in Asian culture, we actually worked from a very low base previously, where teachers indeed were overloaded, they don't have the best of pay and so on. And I remember, even in the very early years of my teaching, when people are asked to attend professional development, it's like a punishment.
Sure.
Is there something wrong that you observe in my teaching that I have to go for this course? That is the extreme reaction. The other reaction is, if I go for professional development and come back, am I going to get a pay increment? So that was what it was, But slowly, I think we get people to see that it is about growing that whole profession of yours. And that is why I mentioned about the values paradigm. Because if I were to come from an angle that, hey, you got to improve your teaching methods, it stinks, the test scores are bad. The teachers are going to react and say that, your policy stinks, right? But if we tell them that, hey, we care about the learners, or it resonates in their heart, I think we've got to help each other and see how best we can help these kids. I think there is a better strategy. I think there's a better pedagogy. There are some things that we can discuss together, and we can create a chapter on improving maths in a certain way, of using a certain model of doing mathematics, and you all play a part, and we want to draw on your expertise to crystallize what this is. I think the teachers will participate. And this is where, in my model I mentioned, you saw the first 5 circle. Outside of that, there's another 5 elements. And these other 5 elements, if you remember, is number 1, is there's the school leadership factor, right? And the school leaders are very important because they have to recognize that when they want the teachers to develop, they are prepared to release the time. And then beyond that, the policymakers got to support the school to be able to give them that little extra resources so that teachers truly can be released to have the hours for development. So I think it starts with the multi-layer support, but everybody wanting to make the teacher professional. And of course, the teacher themselves wants also to be professional. And I can tell you, in all of this kind of professional workshop, when the teachers see the value, they will want to do it. And there will be an organic catalyst where they will just go on doing it themselves. Yeah. So that, I think, is critical.
Can I comment?
Please.
About professional development, I have been doing that for a number of years with teachers from different countries. And unfortunately, sometimes you do see that there are people who are so-called dragged in, or their boss told them to come. And often people do feel that it is a punishment, or they're at least a bit worried, because for many people, professional development means you're either going to unlearn something, or we're going to take you out of your comfort zone to learn something new. And I think that's something we need to perhaps put behind us and make that into a future-driven thing. And as you said, it's about the learner. It's not so much about the teacher. So we have an end goal, and hopefully we all share that.
I want to. You were talking about teacher voice, and I was thinking, what would Mohammed say about that? So in your experience, you've been in these classrooms for a couple of years now. How important is teacher voice in your work? And is the attitude about that changing?
Well, we are trying to change those attitudes. We're trying to give our teachers a voice, and we're working together systemically to ensure that from a policy perspective in the future, our teachers can have a voice. They do play they play a significant role. They are further empowered. But the challenge that I'm currently going through is we're trying to learn as much as we can on the problem, because we don't know what do we address first. It's a holistic approach. And we're trying to figure out what are the best ways that we can support the teachers in order for us to get high academic achievers in the classroom, or motivated students in the classroom.
Before the session, I was thinking about the conversation we had the other day, and where you were telling me how many students there are in public schools here. and it wasn't a very big number. It was 120,000, I think. Was that
Give or take with percentages. My latest statistics were from 2011. So if we do have anyone from the SEC or that could give us updated numbers, great. If not, then we'll stick to this approximation. Yeah.
I was just thinking about that. This is kind of a selfish poll. How many of you in the audience know where Duval County, Florida is? Just raise your green card if you do. Duval County, Florida. Okay, nobody. So this will be a meaningless reference to you all. So I just looked it up, and so if Qatar was a school district in America, you'd be the 23rd largest. You'd be about as big as Duval County, Florida, which is where the reference comes from. Which in a way, I mean, the reason I'm thinking about that is, in a way, it doesn't seem like that heavy a lift to bring that many kids to a higher level of education. What is the heavy lift that you're facing at this point?
If you saw in my presentation, I was talking about teachers training and leadership. It's leadership at every single level. We are trying to create a pipeline of leaders that will be able to drive change, but from a classroom level. And I believe that is key for us. In order for us to fix the system and change the system, this is what we need to do. Because the current ecosystem, we're not attracting some of the best and smartest minds. We need to be able to attract more and more and more in order for us to drive change at every single level.
And before, I want to get to questions from the audience, but just kind of pierce that a little bit. Tell me, just give us a kind of a sense of why the culture isn't where you wish it were right now. Like, what do we need to know about Qatar to kind of unpack that, if you don't mind, in about 30 seconds, by the way.
Sure, no worries.
So no pressure at all.
I wish if I had the answer. It's worth noting that when we started Teach for Qatar, we had different hypotheses to validate, to understand what is exactly the problem. But after being in schools for approximately a year and a few months, we realized that there are different information that we are not aware of. We do not know the root problem. And I'm here I can confidently say I do not know. However, that being said, if this panel was to happen 2 weeks from now, we will be meeting all of our fellows individually to understand what are the root causes. So we're trying to look at the trends and try to understand what are the root causes.
So it's a problem you're still unpacking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But as of now, it's teaching and leadership. That's what we are focused on.
I want to turn to the audience, see if you have any questions.
I just had a question to Mohammed. The leadership sort of model that you've built up with people who are passionate and also, I guess, experts in their own fields, I'm assuming some don't actually have a teaching or education background. Yep. So you've got their passion, you've got them excited, they want to contribute. Where does the sort of teaching background and taking back to what is pedagogy, how they actually teach, how does that fit into your program?
Thank you very much for this question, because we had a lot of people that asked us about this. How are we putting individuals that did not study education or with no educational background in front of our kids? And I'll give you the answer. Our success is based on our selection criteria. I make sure that you have most of the foundations before getting you to join the program. However, that being said, what we take into consideration is subject knowledge tests. Not a single individual from all of our fellows, and I think they're all looking at me right now, they had to do 3 tests. They do it in the assessment day, they do it in the beginning of the summer institute, and at the end of the summer institute. If we believe they do not, or if the team sees that they are not proficient in the subject knowledge test, they will not be in the classroom. As for the pedagogy, we constantly train our fellows so they will understand the curriculum before they go into the classroom. And we try to give them most of the foundations. And remember, it's not an 8-week thing. It's a 2-year thing. So throughout the 2 years, we're constantly developing them from a teacher training perspective and from a leadership perspective. Does that answer your question? I'm hoping you're going to be applying to the program.
This is great. Now that I know you have your folks here, I can ask them if you're telling the truth, and they can raise their red cards.
Thank you.
It's a use that I never even thought we'd have. Let's talk about professional development. Who wants to attack that? Mervi?
Yeah, I can just quickly comment how we do it because, of course, professional development, if it's not relevant, it's not helping anybody, it's just taking up everybody's time. So basically, when we do professional development, first of all, we do a survey prior to that for the participants, what they know, what their orientation is, what their expectations are, and then we tailor the program. Now, often the programs are lengthy programs, so it's not like, one day and that's it, but actually it's food for thought. Then you go back to your school, you implement what the food for thought was and what you've learned. You come back. We use online methods so that you give feedback on was it useful, what are you facing, problems, etc. And then again, like I said, it is more or less progressing throughout the year and fulfilling the school's goals. So not isolated incidents here and there.
So in a way, you're raising the stakes on professional development because it's not just a one-shot commitment. It's
one-off is easy. Long term, it's for the long haul, people. That's what teaching is.
Can you guys just to extend upon that? Can you talk a little bit about why so many systems rely on that sort of one-shot, do it quickly, kind of professional development? I mean, how do we get to that point?
I think that is a very old legacy model. So today's professional development, I think there are 3 points I can add to that. Firstly, I think it has to really cater to the needs of the teachers. So I think teachers cry for practical things, tips on managing very difficult classes, right? So they want to know these things, right? Then they are very open to pedagogical innovations, project-based learning and so on. So I think so it is very important, first of all, the workshop has to be tailored to the needs of the teachers. Number 2, actually, you have to bring the workshop to the school for sustainability. So this is where I think in Singapore, what happened is that the principals and clusters of schools will come together every once in a while and they share on what are the common themes that we think our teachers need. And the teachers want to do a certain aspect of pedagogy, a certain aspect of science inquiry and so on. And they pull together and say that this is what we want to do. And then we scout for the best expert and we get the professors, as well as the master's teachers, we work together. Then we have this workshop with these teachers. And the thing is that it is not a one-time standalone because the teachers know that after the workshop, I have a team of people together and we're going to work out how we're going to implement that.
You create a network.
Yeah, so it created a network. So that is the very key. The other thing is, I think we got to make this professional development so exciting for the teachers. And one of the new elements that I've introduced in Singapore is that we see teachers also as researchers.
Researchers?
As researchers, right. Which then means that we empower them into the network of research resource and teachers start doing mini, from action research, improvement model, to more rigorous research and begin to see themselves in this league of people who learn and see for myself what works and what does not work. And these are the things that excite teachers in the professional development.
So they end up being both detectives and researchers.
Absolutely.
And if I may add, the MOOC we have ongoing on coding at the moment, it's by teachers to teachers.
Does that, by the way, one more quick card check. Does everybody know what a MOOC is? MOOC? Who knows what a MOOC is? Who doesn't know what a MOOC is?
Massive open online course.
Read a card if you don't know what a MOOC is. Okay, so there are a few. Yeah, it's a massive open online course. Let's do a question from this side first and then that side.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. سؤالي حق الأستاذة ميرفي من فنلندا.
My name is Huda Al-Abaidli. I'm director of An-Nahda School. It's been 9 years in our school that we're trying to instill these values, the values concerning the teacher and the learner, and how they can be a facilitator of learning to learners. I really like the idea about the learning village or the educational village. Could you please speak a little bit about this village? Because in Qatar, we have great spaces and we can transform our schools into educational villages with the support of the government. Thank you, Qatar.
Thank you.
Could you repeat the question? Just as much as well as you could. Not word
Sorry,
for word.
it's about learning villages, how to build a learning village or transform a school into a learning village. So basically, what we've done in Finland has been to look at the school as an extension to the community. So really engaging with the community, and then again engaging with parents, of course, who are part of the community, and looking at what we can do together. So we're talking about open spaces, which doesn't just refer to the environment, the physical environment, but really the sort of learning community environment, how to bring people in and how to make the school porous, if you want. And I think that's important because the school shouldn't be, behind closed walls. It should be porous to the society, to the parents, and engage them, because too often we complain that parents don't care about their kids learning, but how should we engage them? How do we make this a two-way street and a dialogue? I think that's one of the first steps to building a learning village, as we call it.
Great, thank you. Over here.
I am so excited. I'm Gwen Lavert, and I'm a content expert with Litnum at the SEC. And I have waited forever to meet Dr. Singh. And Dr. Singh, this question is for you, and it deals with pedagogy. I have been toting around your book, Enhancing Cognitive Functions, and we both are great lovers of the work of Dr. Reuben Feuerstein. But in your book, you say that pedagogy in the 21st century must go beyond making content and teachers thinking visible. And you talk about teachers being so excited about content, but then you say that in order to inject life into the minds, we need to make students' minds and thinking visible to the teacher and the learners themselves. So, since we're talking about qualified teachers for quality learning, when do we, in professional development, begin to develop this whole idea of cognition and helping teachers to develop the cognitive functions in students so that they can become mindful, the teachers become mindful, and the students become mindful in order to take control of their thinking?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for reading my book.
You never know what you're going to do.
Yeah. It's one of my, I don't know how many books, but when we work with students, ultimately the great teacher works with the mind of the learner. So first of all, I want to say that the seeds of what constitute what great teachers do must be sown right in the beginning, in the teacher training. But as we know that a novice teacher and a beginning teacher would primarily concern himself with the content. And so I think we have to be realistic and reasonable. Because for a beginning teacher, he's always concerned with, now how do I teach the subject? I mean, how do I get materials? How do I get resources? So it is about making the content visible. And we've got to help them do that with Finnish, How do you get concrete materials, toys, whatever, to illustrate concepts and make the content visible to the learner. But as the teacher progresses, a great teacher is able to talk about his own thinking processes. And that's why we say that we need a thinking teacher. And the teacher is able to model for the students how I think. And that's where students learn thinking processes, strategies, heuristics, and so on. And then, as you mentioned, along the way, teachers begin to pick up, to understand, and this is where the expert teacher comes in, of what is going on in the mind of the learner. And that's where teachers have to develop very good questioning skills. Even in a relatively big classroom, he knows how to ask the questions and draw out from what is in the mind of the learner. But more importantly, the teachers will be able to create pedagogy where students work in groups and where he could intervene and ask individual questions. And there they can draw out how this child is functioning in all its aspects of cognition. Well, this whole work of cognition is something that is a huge area. And a lot of times students are not able to learn, not because they don't get the concept and things like that, because they don't even have the predisposition to certain aspect of learning, a certain aspect of thinking. And that is why this kind of individual time with the students is important. So good principals in schools do not just have a fixed monolithic way of doing things. A big class, students, whatever. But it is a fact that they would be able to have a whole diversification of pedagogy, different stroke for different folks, and they are able to do the school curriculum in a very active and meaningful way. I just want to say one more point before I let this off, which is that, because many of you here are policymakers, sometimes there is this argument, in the US there's argument about class size and things like that. Many times it is not about the class size. If you have the extra dollar and you want to give teachers, now when Singapore prospered and we had lots of money to give in education, we asked ourselves, what is the extra dollar that is important? So rather than just reduce class size, which we did for some levels, or just the giving more teachers in a very large way, what we did was this. We tell the principals, have a diversity of pedagogy. So there are times where you need 2 teachers in the class because you want to do a lot of group work, right? So the best way is not just to reduce the class size. Sometimes you can have a very good big class, and if you have a great orator, one of them will be with him all the time, right? So the way is we give the extra teachers to the principal who can prove that their whole curriculum is very innovative. And so schools will compete and they will come up with creative curriculum of, hey, for this science lesson, I'm going to do this and do that. And because I have this sort of pedagogy, I need a little bit more teachers here. So we give them 5 teachers, 10 teachers here, extra above the 90 teachers or 100 teachers, so that they can then modify things. So that is the way we can deal with both individualization and effective mass customization.
Great. I think we could go on all day, and I know there are lots more people with questions, and I have some bad news for you. We have just hit our end. If you have some questions for the panelists, I'm sure they'd be happy to stick around for a couple of minutes. Not for too long. I know one of us has to run off. But feel free to come down and chat with these folks informally. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thanks to the panel. Please give them a big hand. Thank you.